it's not a surprise that building that lasting public support is so crucial if we want to see progress, the needed progress. We need to look at not just what we say, but also who says it, how it's said, and how what we say or what is said connects with people and with communities. A lot of things are said that's not heard, and we can do something about that. So as Isabel said, the verified campaign, the Verify for Climate, the communication infrastructure has been working the last year on the Future Thank You and put in place, and UN Live has been so happy to help with that, the Museum for the United Nations. It's not a building, it is a global curator of cultural experiences for the change and for dialogue. So we have been happy, together with Purpose and the UN, to put in action our global We portals in communities across the world and collect stories from the ground, having people tell their own stories for the future, for a sustainable future powered by renewable energy. So it has launched the Verified Champions, a global network of climate messengers, two of which we are lucky to have here today. And messengers are so important. Today's conversation, we will explore how trusted voices from different sectors are building that cultural resonance and relevance that is so needed today to drive action. We'll also talk about the power of popular culture in shifting how people think, feel, and act. And with us to do this, we have a fantastic panel. With us, we have Gustavo Figueroa, a Brazilian climate policy expert and grassroots organizer who built many kinds of bridges between people, communities, policies. Gustavo, one sentence about yourself that will really capture all these wonderful people.
I'm really passionate about wildlife and outdoor lifestyle.
Great. Henning Palan, National Coordinator for Indonesia's Green Faith Initiative and Vice Chairman of the Muhammadiyah. Thank you very much. You mobilize faith communities of all kinds for environmental action. One sentence about yourself and what you're passionate about.
Woman action by faith to climate change.
We love it. Eileen O'Connor, former global journalist and current Senior Vice President for Communication Policy and Advocacy at the Rockefeller Foundation. You have been making change and investing in change big time, including on popular culture. One sentence about yourself and maybe about hope.
We have hope because we believe that climate is an opportunity to reverse inequality and to create systems that provide food security, energy security, and economic mobility.
Right. And Shanta Bali, Chief Climate Scientist at the Fortescue and former BBC science journalist. We have a lot of journalists here. Yeah, isn't it good? And you come from a science background and you have the journalism background and you can really communicate this. One sentence about you and what you're passionate about. She has.
Does that work? Yep. Passionate about, Fortescue is a mining company, but it has a target to eliminate fossil fuels by 2030 across its mining operations. So I'm passionate about getting other businesses to start saying the fossil fuel word and committing to eliminating fossil fuels.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here. It is an important conversation. You're all messengers of various kinds. So listen in and get the good thing. Let me start by a question that kind of frames this, and that was the wrong page. The right one's coming here. I'm really kind of scared of losing these, but they're numbered. What is it that signifies a trusted messenger today when we want to see action?
I think a trusted messenger means someone who's actually working on field, who's actually putting their hands on and giving their view, their point of view to people who trust them. So people who not only talk about it, but also are doing things. I think this is the key message for it.
For me, the messenger is like someone can transfer not only knowledge and practices, but also values. So everybody have a values and how sharing the values, the action, and to be the narrative. So the narrative is like the final from the values, action, listen, learn, and the narrative. So this is very important.
I think a trusted messenger is someone that people can really relate to. During COVID, we worked with Purpose and Project Verified to get people to take vaccines, and particularly in communities where they didn't trust the vaccines in the United States. And we achieved the goal of equitable vaccination rates through basically going to cultural influencers like Big Frida in New Orleans, who wrote a rap song about getting vaccinated, and a lot of people got vaccinated.
From a business point of view, trusted messenger would be someone like our founder, Andrew Forrest, who is one of the richest men in Australia, started a mining company and is now sort of is a total hippie at heart, and can get into those rooms with all the other CEOs and tell them about how profitable it is to decarbonize. So, but it varies. Obviously, who you're trying to convince matters, and right now business is really who we need to convince to move faster. And I think as the election's shown, we need to be talking to those sectors which we're not reaching, and that would be farmers, businesses that are dragging their heels, and so we need people from those regions to represent.
Yeah. And some of the latest research that I have seen on it also shows that, I'm sorry, the journalists are not very trusted, but also politicians are not very trusted. But the ones who are trusted are the frontline workers, who actually have their fingers in it, and experts. So we have some of the people who have here, we both have thinkers and doers and thinkers, funders, doers here. So from the front line where you're working, Gustavo, when you're working, Henning, what is it that from messaging and messengers we need to build those bridges into the communities, and what have you been doing?
Well, I basically work on Brazilian Pantanal, which is one of the 6 biomes within Brazil. It's the largest wetland on Earth, and Pantanal is drying up. Pantanal depends on the water, and it's drying up. So I think you have all seen that the wildfires that committed Pantanal in 2020 and now in 2024. And basically the work I do is I try to simplify the message and try to get people to understand why the Pantanal burning is affecting their lives, even though they are far away, miles away from the Pantanal. So one of the messages I try to pass is the smoke coming from the wildfires in Pantanal, they reached big cities such as São Paulo or other southern cities in Brazil. So there are people actually dying from lung diseases from this excessively smoke coming to this. So I try to make this link that Pantanal is burning and many of the Brazilian people is far away from it, but they are suffering from it as well. And I try to make them understand that they are part of the solution as well. It's not because this is far away that they are not being part of it. So this is basically the message I try to pass on, that what happens in the Pantanal, in the Amazon, or other biomes in Brazil, such as the Cerrado, it actually have a huge impact on their lives, even though they are not seeing it. But there are many studies that show that many people are dying because of these lung diseases because of this smoke coming. So I try to make this link for them to understand that it's all connected. There's no outside on this world.
And as far as I know, that has actually given immediate action.
Yes, one thing that I see that causes immediate action is when we talk about the animals, when we put the wildlife on the process. So people, it's still very hard because when we talk about like people dying indirectly, that they're not seeing people dying from fire. It's hard to touch their hearts. But when I show animals dying there, when we show the wildlife suffering, it touches their hearts. So I think it's a very powerful tool for mobilizing when we link wildlife with people.
So thank you so much. for my role is from the Green Faith is working collaboration with the Muslim community in Indonesia. As you know, the Muslim in Indonesia is around 83% from the population. So how to bring it to that they are super powerful if they join the climate change. So we start with the bridging of value of the Muslim community. The example, this one, you said the same. Stop fossil fuel, a call to conscience. So we use this and we call them, but we start with the value of the from Surah in the Al Quran. So we start all of things by value in the Islam and bridging this from the leaders of the Muslim community to the community to the action. So is it that's we start that like you are all of you is a Khalifa fil art. Khalifa fil art, it means that you have responsibility for the art. From this to translate it that you are to be action at the sum of the implementation project or implementation of in the community. The example that we have the program Hijrah Iklim, the example with purpose. So Hijrah Iklim is translated the value in the Al Quran on value is Islam to the action, and from this they are the young generation can know, oh, that is not only about the action accept nothing, but we have the value from deeply our faith. So we do like that.
Can I twist the question a little bit to you, Eileen, just to shake it up a little? I know now you prepared that, but again, kind of staying connected with communities. So, as we said, a challenging moment of climate policy. What lesson can we draw from, you have journalism, law, philanthropy, action in many different ways. What is it that's needed in terms of keeping both the hope but also that messaging that people can relate to, that can kind of both activate the heart and the hands?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of all three in the sense of we need to get policymakers to be spurred to action. We need people talking about climate more, so getting the conversation in the media, even if they don't trust the media, like getting the weathermen, which they do trust, to talk about climate. And I think also is getting farmers to talk about their experience. Climate has become, I think everyone here knows, politicized in the United States. And so the way in, though, is the voters in the United States certainly voted on economics and on people suffering from economic disparity. So I believe that the way in to talk about the better economics of investing in green technology. Green technology can provide jobs. We've seen it with the IRA. It can actually also lower the cost of energy. And also, if people are concerned in the United States as they are about migration, more migration is coming from climate than from wars and conflicts. And so it makes sense. And I think people are starting to understand in the incoming administration, the economic argument for investing in green technology and a green transition. So I do think we have to meet people where they are, and we cannot throw up our hands. We gotta keep engaging and keep pushing, because the time is obviously, we're running out of time. The necessity is here. And I do think business is also understanding the risk of doing nothing, because it's a risk to their investments.
So in that sense, businesses are also good messengers.
They are. And now we're getting more and more of them kind of putting green products into their advertising. And I also think, we're working with Hollywood and cultural spaces to just, not to be an advocate, but just to have a popular character own an electric car. Because, climate is affecting everybody. And in Hollywood, they had wildfires, then they had heat waves, and then they had an atmospheric river, and it caused mudslides. So suddenly they're not just seeing it, they're feeling it. And I think that is starting to spur people to action. I hope it's not too late, but the seeing and feeling is starting to get people to say, we got to do something.
Yeah. And Shanta, you moved from journalism, from science to journalism, and now to the private sector in a company that does and can do a lot. So that move, how was that spurred by what you saw in the ecosystem?
I think I've felt scientists often feel like they're in a straitjacket because you're expected to publish your papers in pay-to-read journals. There's a very slow movement of propagation of ideas out of science, and so I was very frustrated with that, and I still would love to see that whole system destroyed. But it's really fundamentally holding back the climate change movement, and we're starting to see a few more scientists speak out and feel like they can speak based on their research, but still not enough. And as a result, policymakers are getting a much stronger signal from fossil fuel industries that if they act on the science, they'll loss of jobs, loss of revenues. So business, it's really, for me, business is the only place to work right now. I think science has got it covered. There's still lots of interesting research coming out of climate change, but really now we've got to start creating a world which runs on science, and then we can solve these problems. And just to go on to Eileen's comment on economics, one of the things Fortescue has used to justify its 2030 Real Zero target was an analysis which showed that if we spent $6.2 billion by 2030, we would cut out about 1 billion litres of diesel and gas as well, and we import all of our diesel and gas into Western Australia. So there's a huge saving to be made by getting rid of fossil fuels, and the businesses don't really understand that yet well enough, and then we're going to be working quite hard to raise awareness.
And that's a really strong message, because often you put climate change and climate action against economic gains. But that's a false equation. Mm-hmm. So how, and that's to all of you, how do we help communities and in general help keep momentum and the momentum in the commitment to climate action when faced with both these accusations, but also other pressing and maybe more pressing things that's happening. Climate change is long term. We have something cost of living. We have other challenges that comes right here and now. How do we keep communities engaged? How do we keep the momentum in general?
I think that when we put that to the reality of what we're living in, so everybody, as she said, everybody's feeling it. It's not only on the media on something that is untouchable anymore. People are feeling the heat waves. People are feeling the wild storms, the wildfires. People are feeling the climate changes in their day to day. So I think that when you bring to action and say that, okay, if nothing is done, this is going to get worse. It's not getting any better from this point. So I think we have to unite this message that, all right, this is not getting any better, with there is still time for us to pull the brake and try to reverse it on a long term. So the videos I make, the messages I pass, is always trying to connect that, all right, we are we have a huge problem we are facing, and this is getting even worse. And if we must act. We have to think better of who we're voting for. We're not supposed to vote, and this, unfortunately, we're not seeing this in the world, of course. But I think when we connect the reality that they're living in with a future that's getting even worse, I think people start to act more.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I start with the value of the Islam. We have the Islam is rahmatan lil alamin. So Islam is rahmat, or that is rahmat for all the people. From this, we can translate it, the momentum, how that is a blessing for all. So if we only blessing for all, if you can save of the earth. Because the example, the people, our colleagues in the Nusa Tenggara Timur, the example, they are very difficult to get water. How they can live without water? It is impossible. So many places also about the mining. So a long time ago, they can get water, they can get livelihood better, and they can give for the family. It's very good. But now, because of the impact of the mining concession, they cannot live better. And please remember that we can back to the value of the Islam. That is rahmatan lil alamin. So please stop that didn't something get the rahmat for rahmatan lil alamin like a concession, like a mining. So please stop that is everything cannot do for the people's good things. That is number one. Number two, climate change sometimes is not easy to translate it for the community. So it is how we need like the people, like leaders to translate this. Is it so we can very easy to share with them basically from the Islam, the example Christian or Catholic. If they're like in the Islam, every people want a water, so they cannot praying without water because before praying they will wudu, clean everything. So if your water impacted by mining, so we cannot to cleaning our before praying. So it means that we translated this. And number two, the people cannot going to the school well. The people cannot paying zakat because of they are poor people. So remember, in the Islam, if you are a poor people, so it's very dangerous. So please be back to the value, and the Islam bring everything for you. So and translate it number two is about how to translate it everything about the climate change impact with the easily and everything be to communicate with the community easily, and also with the like give the example. So please give them the example. The example maybe one location or the mosque we make it green mosque. What it imagine about the green mosque? Okay, we put the one solar panel together and we build it. So many things we can do it. Thank you.
I think we have to focus on a benefit risk analysis with mostly focusing for messaging on the benefit. So, for example, in Africa and the global south, we are working with a school meals coalition. We know that school meals actually fight malnutrition. They keep girls in school, especially. They keep kids in school. And they fight against actually food insecurity. It's an amazing concept. But by using school meals and having them supplied by farmers with regenerative agricultural techniques and local farmers, we can boost the agricultural sector in Africa. Right now, Africa imports most of its food, and yet it has 85% of the non-farmed arable land in the world. They can be an importer. Focusing on the benefit and then ultimately on the risk. We will have to supply those school meals no matter what. But if we keep supplying them in the way that we have and growing our crops the way that we have, we will add to climate change, not reduce it. But we have an opportunity through regenerative agriculture to ultimately make the soil a carbon sink. It's a win-win-win. And in addition, we've proven that farmers use less water, they use less money for nitrates and fertilizer. In fact, they don't use fertilizer. And their crop yield is much more productive. And so that's what we're trying to do. And philanthropy, for us, we have some dollars we can invest. We don't have enough dollars. And so this is going to take getting business to understand the benefits and the ultimate profits here. And also, obviously, we work with the public finance, which I keep saying, I don't like to use the word public finance. I like to use the word taxpayer finance, because it's taxpayer money that is at multinational development banks. And I think we got to stop using the word, public finance. It sounds so sane. It sounds so clean.
So, Shanta, I'm gonna give you another one. What has surprised you about what actually motivates people to act?
Hello? What we've come to in our deliberations, which is very much a focus on policy change, because there's a big business that's trying to move quickly ahead of our peers. It's really unhelpful that the policy is not making everyone else do what we're doing. And we have to spend a lot of time in explaining to investors why we're spending money on things that they don't think we need to spend money on. So a lot of our focus has been on policy change, radical policy change, carbon pricing, ending fossil fuel subsidies. I say radical, but it's just what needs to happen. And very much policy change now. And to do that, we decided we had to find an issue that A, no one was talking about, B, talk about it in a different way, and then C, it needed to have direct impact now within the election cycle of policymakers in jurisdictions that needed to change the fastest. And so we alighted on a concept called lethal humidity. And lethal humidity is a term we invented for the rising heat and humidity that's escalating across the tropics and the subtropics, but after 2 degrees will spread to large parts of the Midwest of the US, the food bowl of China, the food bowl of India, West Africa, most of South America, and it's already very, 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 very dangerous in the Middle East, except in the Middle East we have air conditioners. So what we've done is we've set up a council called the Lethal Humidity Global Council. It sits within the Minderu Foundation. We've got Minderu over here. And it's a body of 60 scientists, and we pulled them together, we chose them, we toured universities globally. And what they are empowered to do with quite a large amount of funding is to do research which shows, now will chart indisputably where mortality is happening. When you see those humid heat waves in India next year and you see maybe 100 people reported dead in the media, you might actually see evidence that's actually quantitative and collected during the event that shows that it's much, much higher. And that means that policymakers are going to have to answer to the rising impacts of climate change within their election cycles. So that's the route we're taking.
So it's the linking the science, linking what people can see and feel, and that has consequences. You know, I was in an event yesterday about the triple crisis, climate, biodiversity, and pollution. And isn't it so that when parents can see their kids suffer from asthma because of the pollution, when we can feel the extreme heat and it's getting unbearable and people actually die, when the water scarcity comes, when those consequences, that's when climate change become real, not 1.5 degree, which is important, but it's kind of when it's something that we can think and feel. But then also, how do we get it to people? And let me just kind of ask, and I know many of you have your cards. How do you combine that? Your films, your investment in popular culture, and what you kind of also do and invest in, that power of popular culture, music, film, TV, art, sports, gaming. What is it that when we talk verified and strong trusted messengers and messages, what is it those that can do the popular culture?
I think they're one of the most important part of the process. Like many people won't listen to some wild biologist that works in the Pantanal, but they will listen to a soccer player that is widely known worldwide, and they have a very important part on this role. And what I think people they usually listen to their idols and sportsmen and celebrities and famous people. They have an important role on passing this message on. And what we see is that there are very few of them who are really engaged on this cause. Many of them are not giving a damn, sorry for the word, but they're not giving a word for it. And this is very concerning because this is going to affect them too. Of course, they're going to be the last one on the queue to be affected because they have a lot of money. But if they are joining our team, I think we're going to have a very good chance to win in this game. But that's it. That's many famous people that they have to link their voices on this issue, and we're not seeing it being done enough.
Okay. Yes, faith leaders. Number one, I think because of faith leaders, it's important.
It keeps going out.
Hello. Yes, faith leaders. So for faith leaders, the important is to approach with the value of faith, number one. So how to approach them is with the value from the Al-Quran and Sunnah, but remember about the local wisdom, because we thought the local wisdom that is nothing, and the local wisdom in Indonesia has different province, different wisdom. So depend of the location. That is number one. And number two, remember that it is very important to educate with the education sectors. And number three, I think it's about the social media. So the leaders of faith also using this, how to communicate with the community and sharing about the values.
Eileen, you can also you spoke a little bit about Hollywood, but in general about popular culture. But I also want to acknowledge we have many of the creatives in the room today, who kind of collectives of creatives. So what's the role of that to kind of make this heard, felt, and acted upon?
In art and film?
The culture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and sorry, I'm not wearing the headphones. I think the batteries are dead, and also I have hearing aids, and I've programmed them to hear voices. So the bionic. Anyway, so art and film. I think that's critically important, and I also think the sports managers. But I think it also goes down to really basics like parents. So there's we've been giving a grant to a thing called Too Small to Fail, which is basically they've been taking doctors, pediatricians, and obstetricians and working with parents, because there are playgrounds in the United States where it's so hot when kids fall down, they're basically getting really severe burns. And so that now, but also talking to the parents about the effects of heat or pregnant women, and the effects of heat on or the air, et cetera, on their children, and how that even affects brain development. So that has energized parents to sort of act and to push, and I think that's really important. And in I can't say what it is, but a medical drama in the United States at some point is going to be doing a sort of basically a section about this, a show about this, in a sense, which is subtle, but having a heat dome, a heat wave, and showing the health effects on people. And we're hoping, that's not in your face. It's going to be subtle, but it's going to be important, because it's really just raising awareness of how climate change affects your everyday life. It affects everything in your life. And I think that's really, so it to your short answer, it takes all of this. It takes all of these messengers.
Great, thanks.
I'm not an expert on this.
No, okay, well, then I'll give you another one.
Okay.
What piece of advice do you have to people? And then it's this very delicate balance, like so many things in life, yeah. What piece of advice do you have for others working in private sector to what they can do to kind of turn private sector and move it in the right direction?
I think I'd go back to the decarbonisation argument and the economics of that, because unless you've got someone like a CEO or a board members who are asking for it, you've got to justify it based on the economics. And the economics will be there, but you have to do the analysis. So it's just about doing the homework.
Does economics always win over... Does it always win?
Pretty much.
I know businesses kind of are here to make money, but they're also here to provide goods.
They are. It really depends, I think, on the culture in your business. I think Fortescue is quite unusual. I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's unusual in that there's quite a strong sense of awareness of the impact we're having on our emissions. The emissions of the iron ore industry out of Australia, the 4 big iron ore companies there, our Scope 3 emissions from the steel that's made in China from our iron ore are as big as Russia's. And again, admittedly, our Scope 1 and 2 emissions are quite small. Not small, but 2 million tons per annum of CO2. But we have to bear in mind that we are having a huge impact on the climate, and we are responsible to do something. I think there's quite a high awareness of that.
Right. Okay.
A really short aside. As a journalist, it was always follow the money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I'm also just going to say something about the popular culture from UN Live, the Museum for the United Nations. I'm just going to encourage you to check out Nature with capital letters on some of the biggest streaming platforms, because now a lot of Nature is now an artist, owns its own sounds. So when you listen to nature's nature sounds, you'll actually generate royalties for conservation. And then musicians are stepping up, mixing nature sounds into their music, and stepping up and talking about it, why they do that, whether it's the serene sounds from the Arctic or whether it's the wildfires from wherever and the heavy rain from Bombay, mixing it into their music, talking about it. So check out It Sounds Right, because it sounds right, that it called Sounds Right, and it's Nature the Artist. So check it out. We're going to go to some questions, and then I'm going to come back to the panel, if that's okay. I can see, so I'm going to ask you, and this is both where I'm a time police, instigator, and maybe troublemaker. I'm going to ask you to ask questions and not make statements. We have one here. Do we have moving mics or? Okay, so that will be the moving mic.
Thank you so much. I just want to ask one question to Madame. Do you think when a businessman is thinking about how to make $1 billion and billion of dollars, is it possible for him to hear this simple message about the world, the earth, to stop investing billions of dollars in oil, for example? Is it so simple? How kind of message could we use to convince that kind of businessman that wants money and more money by investment?
That's a really probably huge academic research question. But from personal experience, for example, our founder, Andrew, he did a PhD in 2016 in Australia on marine ecology, and it changed his entire outset and his mindset. He was a mad diver. He loved, he grew up in the outback of Australia, but the PhD pushed him over the edge in terms of understanding that he had to use his business for good. So I do think things can change you. I don't know. I imagine for different leaders it's different. There's also quite a sort of like the I don't want to say there's a clubbist mentality at that level, the highest levels, and if one person's doing it or one business is doing it, they get watched very closely. And then it enables other businesses to follow. So while some investors won't let them move first, if they see that another company is doing well or getting well received or accolades globally, recognition, it helps other businesses move. So I think it can be done, but maybe not for the fossil fuel industry, because we're not seeing much change there. I think other tools are needed.
Good. And I'm going to take a couple of questions so we can collate them. If you have a comment to this, I don't know, but else I'll just take a couple.
Yeah, I think the other thing is there's a lot of economic modeling right now. And for example, our chief investment officer for our endowment is working with a lot of other endowment managers. And we're basically, line is we know things have to happen. We know green technology is the future. And so they see that as a hugely beneficial investment.
Hello, I am Furkon from Indonesia, Student Muslim Action Unity. We call KAMI. I have question to Baning. Yes, Baning. To what extent can young people become trusted messenger in their community, in their religion community, and how can they connected urgently climate change with spiritual or moral values in their religions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mas Furkon. For sure, the young generation is very important to engaging with the climate change, and that is become a leader. So I think that's how to do is that the young generation can educate themselves or can hear. Hello. Yes, the young generation can see or get the many information from around the world about how the climate change, what the impacted for the young generation, how about the data. And you know that the young generation have also can have good spirit and also skill, because it's very easy to make it the social media, so the young generation can use it. And for the especially from the faith base, the young generation in multi faith around in Indonesia, also in the world, have connected it others. So don't worry and become a leader of the next generation. So young leaders is important to engaging of the climate change.
Thank you very much. And we have a question here.
Hi everyone, my name is Nivedita. I'm from India. My question is for Eileen. I don't know if you can hear me, but my question is about quantity over quality, or the other way. So, do you think that climate messaging should be about quality of messaging, or should it be about quantity? How can we create a balance between the two? Because I've seen that a lot of low quality and low quantity climate content is floating around. So how can we actually intervene to improve the quality and also the quantity of climate discussions?
I think it's important to have quantity, but I completely agree with you. We need to be consistent in the quality of the messaging, and at least the quality of the trend of the messaging. For example, we know that doom messaging just does not work. Makes people feel hopeless. So making sure that communicators are avoiding that. And so that would go to your point about quality. And I think it's important as for any communicator, any advertising campaign, or any even movie maker knows, you do focus groups. You understand who the messenger is, what is the message that's going to move people in that community. You have to actually work on understanding the culture and what is important to the people. So, but I do think quantity right now is important because there is so little of it. I mean, really, when you look at the data, it's incredible how few people understand climate change, particularly in the global south, connect extreme weather in the global north to climate change. So we're trying to do that through working with meteorologists, and so because people trust local news. So that's a quality. It's also getting it out to a lot of channels.
Thank you. And we have a question over here.
Hi there, Sean McGuire from the Clean Air Fund. We work on air pollution. Just listening to the panel, I wanted to check something and then ask a question. It seems to me that the message is that if you want to convince a community, you need to be in that community, part of that community, and have that messenger from the community. But we work a lot with business, so I wanted to ask Shanta that the business community is not moving very fast. And yeah, you've got one great example there of like a philanthropist, mining leader who wants to change things, but he's not converting his community very, very quickly. Is there anything we can do to accelerate change within the business community?
Oh, thanks. Very true. We've seen one hopeful sign this year, so from BHP, which has committed quite in a nuanced way to not use offsets towards its 2030 target. It's a huge step for a mining giant. And a lot of we think, we are talking a lot behind the scenes, establishing trust with each other and trying to work with each other against, for examples like things like Scope 3, which for the iron ore industry are a huge problem that we can't really do much about until China decides it wants to decarbonize its steel mills beyond just stop exporting iron ore. So there's some enormous challenges, and we can't do it as a business. We do need camaraderie across the industries, and I think you're going to see a lot more of these industry-wide approaches, a bit like the IMO for the shipping industry, which is bringing in its own carbon pricing mechanism hopefully next year. I think we're going to see industry approaches to climate change rather than this sort of more centralized approach, perhaps. But other than that, I don't know how.
Thanks, Eileen. You had the first one.
Can I just quickly, one thing, I do think business is moving, but obviously because of the politicization of this, I think a lot of them aren't making it vocal. because they don't want to be in the crosshairs on the anti-ESG investment. And so there is movement, but I agree with you, it's not fast enough. But.
And we have the last question here.
Hi, I'm Ansam from Maldives, and I just had a question for you. I just wanted to know. I just wanted to know. I'm so sorry. I'm very bad with names. I just wanted to know what people's reactions were when you first started connecting climate action with religion, because I also come from a Muslim. It's a 100% Muslim country, actually, Maldives is, and we do have some negative comments floating around, like. People are saying that it's okay to exploit anything that's halal, so instead of caring for the environment. So how did you overcome that, if that was a factor?
How we start? I think each country is different approach with another country. Please understanding deeply about the culture in your country before we work with the faith-based. But remember that a leader of faith-based are powerful. Like in many countries, like especially in Asia, I think that's maybe sometimes the government, the people didn't trust it with the government, but more trusted with the leader of faith and also leader of the community. So we start with them with deeply communication. How about the problem? I remember about please discuss about the risk. Please discuss about the solution. So if we see about the problem around with us, how to bring it. And I think we can open more and more about the Al-Quran and Sunnah, because in there we can see that number one, that we are a Khalifah fil ard. And number two, Islam is rahmatan lil alamin, that you understand with this also. And number three, in the Islam we have ijtihad. Ijtihad is like that scientists that we can not only working with the text, but also to translate the text to actually the daily of life. So we can use the culture, we can use scientists, we can working with the business sector. So I think not only the Islam, but majority of the faith is openly. They have ijtihad at the Muslim, at the Islam. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're just, time flies when you're having fun, but unfortunately we are kind of getting to the end. Trusted messengers, parents, preachers, teachers, peers in the communities, but also the fandom, the popular. So I think we got around a lot here today, and we have an amazing audience. So could I get each of you have 30 seconds, maybe 45, to give one piece of advice for others working with trusted messengers or wanted to become a trusted messenger. What is it that people here can go home and do?
I think everybody can be a trusted messenger, even though it's not for millions of people, but for their community, for their friends and family. So we must talk about it, talk about climate change with our friends, with our family. We have to put this issue on every place. Every place is a place to talk about climate changes and environment. So everybody can be a trusted messenger. Just go ahead and do it.
Me too. Remember about the Khalifah fil ard. Each of the people born in the earth is a Khalifah. So everybody is a messenger. And sometimes the NGOs is called the activists. So we are all of us as activists. Not only activists from the NGO, but not like this. So we are all of us as a Khalifah fil ard.
I always say in every organization I'm in that everyone is a communicator, and there's a saying in politics that that when you're sick of saying it, they're hearing it for the first time. So I think just keep saying it and saying it and saying it to different audiences in ways that connect to the audience, and we're going to move the needle.
I think everyone needs to stop being really nice to each other. And if you see people being really nice to each other and all saying the same thing, then I actually really strongly agree with the personal. I think we were told that personal action doesn't make a difference in the 90s. Then in the 80s, then it was like only personal action will matter, and now it's gone back the other way. I think we all can do something, but we shouldn't. We should be okay with being uncomfortable and calling out bad behavior.
And if I may just wrap it up, kind of trusted messengers are so important. And what is also important, and we can all be messengers for that, maybe it's not messengers for peace, but it's messengers for climate action. And it is creating that. We see that empathy in the world is going down. We see that the feeling of agency is going down. And we can counter that by communication and by dialogue. And when we can do that, we can come with the messages, we can translate the data into something people can feel and think and act upon. And creating that sense of belonging to each other and to the planet, creating that sense of a global we is something we need so much, and we need everybody to raise their voice and use everything they can. Thank you very much for coming. And thanks to Purpose, thanks to the UN, and thanks to the great panel.